Hello, welcome to another episode of Bunny Uggs and Mental Health here on YouTube. I'm your host, Todd Rennebaum. This is another excellent episode for you. This one is with Lindsay Kelly. Her husband is living in a care home. He has, it's not dementia, but it's like dementia. It's actually MS related. And her husband are only in their 40s, and she has 6 kids at home. And so we're going to talk about the challenges and the mental health challenges with going through all of that. So that's coming up. But please remember to hit like and subscribe and to share and all that stuff. And if you like the episode, if you like the podcast, and you'd like to buy me a coffee, there's a link in the show notes down there, and there's merchandise and stuff like that down there too. So it'd be great if you bought something. But anyway, without further ado, I give you Lindsay Kelly. I don't know. Would you be offended if someone said, "Oh, your videos are cute"?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
I don't get offended. Yes, some people will say that. I get plenty of comments. I get so many good comments, and I also get plenty of the opposite. But I don't know if you read through my comments, but I don't read through my comments sometimes, but I occasionally will see 1 or 2 or 20 that people will say things. But for the most part, people are so kind and loving. And so when they come out and they're like, "Oh, you guys are so cute," or "Your husband's adorable," or whatever, yes, I know where they're coming from. And even if they say it like in whatever way they say it, it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take it as a compliment.
I don't read through the comments, mostly because it's triggering to me quite often.
Is it?
Well, it can be, yeah. Like when you're reading something, it's like, oh my God, it's like, gets my blood boiling sometimes, some comments. But I'm assuming, because this was a question I had prepared, are people commenting that like you're exploiting your husband and he's disabled, and how dare you put him on camera and just for followers and stuff. That's where my mind goes if someone's going to say something negative.
I get plenty of those comments, and
Yeah.
I get just plenty of everything, as if that's my purpose in sharing on social media. But I'm okay with that. I'm okay with people being wrong about why I'm sharing. But the other thing, I have 2 things to say about that. One is what part of it is not my story? Like, what part of it are they thinking? I had 6 children with my husband. We had a great marriage for a long time. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I get dealt with the hand of, you have to be a full-time caregiver to your husband. He can no longer work for your family. So now you're going to be the full-time provider of your family, and you're going to be the full-time mother and father of your family. You're taking on both roles, and go just immediately. It was just landed in my lap all of a sudden. And so if people make a comment like that, that is really what I want to know, is what part of it do they think that I'm exploiting him? Like, aren't you exploiting your spouse when you go share your beach trips, or you go share that you went on a hike? Like,
oh snap!
But like,
I love that response.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
absolutely.
Because this makes people feel uncomfortable, because I'm sharing something that's very real, and because I don't have a normal, conventional type marriage, people come at me with these comments of, "You're exploiting your husband." But it's like, just because it makes you feel uncomfortable of something that is very real and happening. I mean, what do people expect me to do? Am I supposed to hide? Am I supposed to all of a sudden be like, "Oh yeah, let's just hide this because it's a disability. We don't want anyone to know about it. We don't want anyone to know about the hard that we've gone through individually and as a couple or as a family, because it makes people feel uncomfortable." However, I get so many people who say the opposite of, thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm going through this and this and this. Thank you for bringing awareness to people. One of the very real things about this disease is that when people get hit with a mental illness or an autoimmune disease, there are so many people who won't understand. And I say won't because I've had family members who I've tried to tell for years what's going on. And I'm not sure, I haven't been on their side of things. All I know is they all of a sudden are very judgmental of me, but not, and just as a caregiver, all of a sudden I get thrown into this thing, but it's like they compound that hard by passing judgments and lack understanding and deciding not to understand. So anyway, I'm rambling about that, but
No, you're not. This
it's
is
good to bring awareness. And I, with my caregiver support group, I launched that. I think it was, I did it in December. And from December to now, I have almost 800 people in the caregiver support group who are going through similar things as me. They battle the same things. Like some of them have people, their spouse in a assisted living, and they're my age as well. Like I'm not the only one going through this. And also just that they're living the very real things that caregivers go through. So
yeah. Do you mind me asking how old you guys are?
I'm 41. My husband's 43.
Oh, okay. So I'm 46, and so like, yeah, watching your videos, I was like, oh shit, like this could happen to me tomorrow.
Yep.
I could be on either role I could be playing, even after a car accident or whatever. It doesn't have to be an autoimmune disease or anything else. And I think it's amazing that you are actually bringing this subject to light. I live in a population of 2,000 people, and there's people in this town that are dealing with it. So, and no one, and like you're the first person I've ever seen kind of bring it to light. So, um, those haters they're just not well themselves, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that, they're just on, I want to say this, like, it's more telling about them than it is about me. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think one thing about sharing my story is that there are very real moments that I have had as a spouse, and watching your husband go through that. You go through a grieving process, but you also go through so many hard times of feeling lonely and hitting your own rock bottom of, oh my gosh, like how did this happen? And like you said, it could happen to anyone. It happened to me, and I did not expect that to happen. In fact, when it first happened, I thought my husband was going through like a midlife crisis. I was like, why is he acting this way? Because we were in emergency mode all the time, and I thought it was a midlife crisis. And I had never talked to my parents about any argument me and my husband got into, because I feel like that stays between a husband and wife. You kind of work on that together. You don't need to bring in a third party to help, resolve these small issues you have on the daily with your spouse. But I remember this one time, my husband, because he was acting out in a way that I was not used to. I had not been, none of my siblings have mental illness. I was raised in a fairly normal home. We had
Quote unquote.
yes, yes. 'Cause, we had our own struggles growing up as well. And yeah. So I seeing this and seeing the drastic change in my husband, how he went from being charismatic and outgoing and just so loving to me to slowly over about a 10-year period of time getting these mood swings and anxiety attacks, and just I just thought it was a midlife crisis. And so I remember one time just feeling like there were some things that happened, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I need help. And so I called my parents and I told them, I'm like, this is what's going on in my home, and I'm not sure what to do about it. And my parents were just super loving and kind, and like telling me like it's gonna be okay. They didn't know what was going on either, but it kind of all started there, where it just all of a sudden was like thrown on me. and you go through your own emotions. Like, you go through emotions of like, at first I'm like, am I going to get divorced? Am I going to, like, I had things like that where I didn't know what I was going to do. I've had my own moments where I'm like, you try to find your own outs, and it's very difficult for a caregiver. I think that caregivers are, they, like how you said, it just gets thrown at you, but you have people in your life that expect you. This is how I explain it. You go from, picture somebody who maybe weighs like 400 pounds, and that person's expected to go from 400 pounds to looking like the Incredible Hulk overnight, and deal with all the emotional eating and all that in no time. And I feel like when you get thrown into this caregiver role, there's so many judgments and so much, and good and bad. There's so many, you get the people who are like, oh my gosh, we don't know what's going on, but we would love to dive in and help. Let us know what you need. Or how about I come clean your kitchen? Or how about I bring your family dinner? There's so many good people in this world. And then there are people who don't necessarily understand, which is totally good. I can feel love for them, but you just get to know, um, you get to know who your people are, and you get to see all sorts of things. But as a caregiver, you're expected all of a sudden to be this strong person and not go through your own emotions. And I think that that's one thing that I've noticed is that, uh, I don't know, you're not strong overnight. It's like, to
Hmm.
get to where me and my husband are at, that's taken time for me to wrap my mind around.
Yeah, yeah. I can only imagine. Um, when you were talking about you were finding outs, like when he was before he was diagnosed or before you knew what was going on, you're thinking, "Oh God, how do I get out of this?" Do you have any guilt or any shame, or maybe not now, but at the time once he was diagnosed, where you're like, "Oh, now I feel so bad for thinking I needed out of here, and it was actually a medical issue."
You know, uh, I mean, uh, I have guilt and regrets about many things, I guess. I have some that are, well, I'll explain this. When I didn't know what was going on with him, and I was like, maybe, like, I had never even entertained getting divorced. And I was just like, I can't live like this anymore. Like, I'd rather just live alone than go through some of this stuff that I was having to deal with, because uh, the mood swings were out of control, but not just out of control. Like, I found myself having to protect my children, and and so I would either have to take my husband with me wherever I went, or grab all six of my children and put them in the car with me and let him be at home. And I found myself in this really exhausting situation where I was having to figure that all out, and my kids were, um, it was just very difficult on our family, especially for
Hmm.
me. And I mean, not especially for me, my kids especially too. But
Hmm.
um, when I didn't know what was going on with him, I was just, um, this is a very, this is part of it. And I just want to be very real, because
Hmm.
I'm not the only one who's experienced this. But when that was all going on, and I didn't know, I just knew that I was getting exhausted. Um, I was even building up resentment, because I was still viewing at him as my spouse instead of me
Hmm.
being a caregiver and trying to take care of my husband. I was still looking at him in that I had expectations for him as a spouse. Um, he came to me, my husband did, and I look back on this and think what a blessing it was, because he was mentally not stable, but he found this um, bipolar and depression support group, here where we live. And I was just like, okay, fine, I'll go to it. Like, he was asking me, like, just go to it with me. I heard about it, let's go. So I went to this bipolar depression support group with him. And I sat there, and me and Reed, my husband, we were just quiet. And I listened to everybody in that room, and I was like, oh my gosh, like people are sick. Like not a heart attack, not a broken arm, not the flu. People actually are walking around sick, and they have these bipolar and depression, and they are walking among everybody, and we're thinking everybody's fine. And I'm watching all these people. I'm living through um my own kind of like, I don't know, turmoil of what's going on in my own life, and watching my husband go through this. And when I see these other people, it was seriously a moment of like understanding and compassion towards my husband. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that you're going through this. But it also was a road of like, maybe we're on the right track. Maybe you have a mental illness. Maybe that's what's going on with you. So, as far as the guilt, I have guilt about those feelings and guilt about lacking understanding, because now I look at it and I'm like, I don't know if somebody's dangling off the edge of the cliff and you're just like, well, get up, just come on. Like, I feel like,
Cheer up.
yes, cheer up, you're fine. I feel like in a way I was kind of treating him like that, like suck it up and just, just get over it kind of a thing. And
Right.
and when I saw these other people, there was a woman there. I remember her at this support group looking just so perfect. She had 4 kids. She was just so cute and skinny and just bright, like smiling. And she was the one leading the class that night. And I was like, oh, certainly she's just here to lead this. But she had a problem with, I think she was undiagnosed. They thought she had bipolar, but she said she had tried to commit suicide. And she said, like, she has 4 kids and a good person, good Christian person. And she's like, I have a hard time every morning not wanting to cut myself. Every morning when I get out of bed, that is what I want to do. And just open up my eyes to a whole new world of people that I had never experienced before.
Mm-hmm. So you could have easily been some of the people that are maybe giving you, maybe not to the extreme some of the haters are throwing at you, but you could have been easily the person that was making incorrect judgments.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. And
yeah. So that's why you have empathy for them, because you were also in that role.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that I ever, I can't say, like, you evolve over time and there's mistakes you make in general as a human being, but I can't say that I would ever get on somebody's feed and be as mean as some of the people me. But I can't say, like, even now, like, I'll see a video and be like, oh, that's interesting. But it's given me a whole new perspective that I'm like, I have no idea what they're going through or why that, like, even just things that I completely don't understand now. I might not understand it, but it's made me be a little more compassionate that I don't understand, or I don't know everything that I'd like to think I know,
Yeah. Yeah. I do know,
Yes.
I don't know. So your husband was having, okay, Reed.
Yep.
That's good to know. And so Reed was having mental health issues, but it was actually brought on by multiple sclerosis. Is that right?
Yeah. We can call it MS, but
okay, good, because it's hard to say.
I know it is hard to say, and I don't like saying it either. Yes. So, so that's one thing that I want to bring awareness to, is that I was going to, from that point on, we were going to a psychiatrist. He was an NP, super nice guy. That's a nurse practitioner, sorry.
Gotcha.
And he was like, I was explaining to him, I'm like, this is what he was telling us, that he was bipolar. And I was saying, these are the things that I'm seeing in my husband. Is it possible that he's bipolar? And at some point, I remember thinking, I wonder if this is my husband's MS. And
so he had been diagnosed with MS already.
yes. So my husband's history is, when he was 17 years old, he got diagnosed with relapsing remitting MS. When when we were dating and all of that, I didn't see any of his symptoms. When I was pregnant with our first baby, he started to have numbness that started in his feet and crawled all the way up to the middle part of his back. From there, he would limp and had a hard time walking. I would have to drive most of the time. He would have to drive to work and stuff, so it was kind of complicated. But when it was us driving together, I would drive because his foot couldn't always be on the pedals, or he sometimes would miss the brake. It wasn't ever dramatic, but it was just kind of out of precaution that maybe it was best for me to drive. So he had those symptoms for, I can't remember, I think it was a total of about 8 months, and then they completely went away. And at one point, I remember we went to a neurologist, and Reed, my husband, was like, maybe I've heard the MS can go away. I wonder if it went away. And the neurologist, I remember, we got an MRI done, and Reed got an MRI done, and the neurologist walked in and he said, well, you definitely still have MS. There's more lesions on your brain, but we weren't, I was like, oh, isn't this cool that you don't have any symptoms? But he in fact did have symptoms. So he had MS when we got married. And then officially in 2019, he was diagnosed with progressive MS. And so, but looking back on it, he's been having progressive symptoms since 2013. That's when I noticed the first symptoms. And then those slowly got worse until about 2017. And then they were just, I was trying to 2017. And then I was trying to kind of hide it and hold it in, what was going on, because I thought maybe he was just having a midlife crisis. And then, I can't remember what we were talking about, but I kind of went on a tangent.
No, that's okay. I have ADHD, so I forget too.
Good.
So so it was 2017. So you would have been in your 30s even when he was starting to.
Yes.
So how long ago has he been in the care home?
He has been there so almost 2 years, coming up in April. He was hospitalized in January of 2 years ago, and from there they discharged him. It was a huge blessing. It was just one of those things where I was losing my own mind. Are
you from the Midwest, by the way?
No.
Originally?
Do I sound like that?
Every once in a while, yeah, the odd word.
Yeah. Is it like a I don't know.
Like Wisconsin or something.
Oh, really?
My mind. I'm losing my mind.
My mind.
I don't know. It's very subtle. Sorry. Squirrel.
No, I was born and raised in Utah, and that's where I live now. So.
Okay. Beautiful state, by the way.
Yeah, it is. Have you been here?
I just for like a couple days we drove through on a family trip.
Okay.
And yeah, it was just beautiful. But sorry. Back to when he first went to the care home.
Oh, yes. He went to the care. You remembered. Good job.
I did.
He went to the care.
Good job.
Yes.
See? Wisconsin. Never mind. Sorry. Oh, God.
Yes. So he went to the care home. It was April of 2022. And during that whole process, I was so burned out. First of all, you hear people with kids who are just like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. Like, my husband alone was a full-time job. At that time, I was working 2 full-time jobs. I had 6 kids, and my mom and my sister were watching my husband all day for me. My husband wasn't wanting to be home. That's another thing, is people will say, like, how could you put him in a care facility? I would for sure have my husband at home. But when you factor in that you have to be a mother to protect your children, you have for me, I was losing my sanity. I mean, I have two full-time jobs, the stress of that, trying to keep up with work. Um, my routine was I would get up. The only time I had alone was at 5 a.m. I'd get up, I'd go work out. The second I got home, I was getting my kids up out the door for school, like driving them to school. I was then getting my husband up. And at that time, and even still, like he wasn't remembering to shower, or even if I just said, hey, go shower, he wouldn't do it. So I had to physically help him take off his clothes and make sure he got in the shower. From there, he could do the shower, but he wouldn't. If I just told him to do it, he wouldn't do it. So I had to get him up, get him in the shower. Um, while he was in the shower, I'd get my other kids ready. I'd take my high school students and then my junior high students, and then I would come home, get my elementary school students ready, get my husband out of the shower, get him ready. I'd get myself ready for work. We'd all leave out the door. I'd drop my elementary school kids off at school, then drive my husband up to my mom's or my sister's, and then go to work all day, come back home. My husband oftentimes didn't want to come home because he was, the noise made his symptoms much worse, and he would get anxiety immediately. His depression would kick in. So I understood why he didn't want to be here, because the noise, just a big family, but it was just also a lot to put on one person to do all of that. So then I'd get my younger kids in bed. By that time, I'm so exhausted, but I go up and get my husband from my mom's, bring him home, get him ready, and then I'd get up and do that all over again. So, so it was really, really wearing. And I would tell my parents, I'm like, I feel like I am told to get up and just start running a marathon every day. And the second I sit down, they're like, get up and run another marathon. Like, it's just like, it felt like I was doing that every day. And so having this opportunity, and a huge blessing, allowed my kids to be themselves again. Like, I saw them just be brighter and not so sad and not so worried that their dad was going to get angry or their dad was going to have an anxiety attack because they laughed too loud. Or so it's been such a huge blessing for our entire family that I know many people don't have this opportunity to be able to help put their loved ones in an assisted living, but we have such a better quality of life as a marriage and as a family with it.
Yeah, I can imagine. And it's not like Reed doesn't have dementia, or does he? Or is it like that? Like, I know he has memory issues and stuff, but like, I don't know. Explain what's going on with him, I guess.
Okay, so I was mentioning how one of the symptoms that, when I told you that I thought Reed was having a midlife crisis,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that was happening with him is his memory was going. And I would have a conversation with him in the morning, and in the afternoon I would bring it up. Like, we would joke around in the morning about something, and then I'd just bring something up in the afternoon when he got home, and he'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, no, I remember this morning when we were laughing about this. And he was like, no, I don't remember that.
Mm.
And the other thing was, his work was like, is everything okay at home? He was a teacher. We're Christians, and we go to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so he was a teacher for that. Here in Utah, we have seminary buildings off to the sides of high schools and junior highs. So my husband taught seminary, and everyone loved to be in his class. Like, he was a fun person, as you've seen. He
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have as much of a filter anymore, but he was such a fun teacher, and just so, not just fun, but like engaging. People wanted to listen to what he had to say. And even I would go to his classes sometimes, and I would just be like, oh my gosh, I wish I could sit in his classes all day, every day, because he was so good at it. So his work was like, is I'm noticing this about Reed. He's not able to start a lesson and bring it full circle. He's all over the place. He was also having mood swings. So, like, instead of being patient with his students, he was like starting to act out and yell at them. And I was like, that was out of character for him too. And so he was, I don't know. And then he was also having to miss work. But anyway, so memory loss, my ADHD. So his memory loss was one of those things. I remember sitting in a car with him, and I had showed him this song, and I was like, I love this song. And I showed him this song, and
Gangster rap.
I can't remember. It was a cool song. I mean, I think I could think of it. But it was a cool song, and I remember showing it to him, and then the next day we got back in the car, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, this is such a cool song. I've never heard it before." And I was like, "Yeah, I just showed it to you yesterday." And he was like, "Oh, I don't remember." We got in the car the next time, and I played that song, and he said the same thing. He's like, "Oh, I like this song. I've never heard it before." And since this was all new to me, I was kind of like, what is going on? I, on the fourth time, was like, I'm going to play this song like that week, 4 times in 1 week. I'm like, it was kind of a test where I'm like, I am going to see if he remembers the song. He can't remember conversations. He can't stick with what we're saying. And I'm like, I'm going to see if he remembers the song. So I played it for him again. And he said the same thing that he had said the last 3 times he heard it. He's like, this is a really cool song. I have never heard it before. And I remember just like, we're driving in the car, I'm the passenger. I remember like kind of looking at him and being like, there's something seriously wrong. I don't know what it is, but we need to figure this out. If your work is noticing, we're noticing at home, you're missing work a lot, and you're having to go to my mom's and your siblings' houses to help. There's something wrong. So memory loss was one of the first symptoms I noticed with the progressive MS. I don't know. I would tell neurologists, by the way, I'm like, he has short-term memory loss. And they had this little test, and they're like, his memory seems fine. And I'm like, okay, I will diagnose, and you just listen to me. I'm seeing this. He doesn't remember things. His work is seeing things. It was so crazy to me to talk to neurologists and them be completely closed off, like that they wouldn't recognize something was wrong. So with the symptoms he was having, actually, I actually had to check my husband into a mental hospital from the symptoms that he was having. From that mental hospital, biggest blessing of my life, because the psychiatrists were like, we believe this is his MS, but we need to get neurology on board. So it was the psychiatrists that were the ones that actually were saying, we think his MS has moved to a progressive stage. I was so glad to get psychiatrists on board with neurology, because that's how we made the diagnosis that it was progressive MS. And he goes to see some pretty great doctors, the hospital and everything that he goes to. But from going through this process, when I checked him in the hospital, one of the psychiatrists explained to me, so MS causes scarring all over your brain and your spinal cord. And one of the psychiatrists said, picture an outlet in a wall, and there's a wire going between that outlet. And picture that somebody just came and cut right through that wire. What would happen to the outlets? And I was like, well, they probably wouldn't work. And he said, that's what's happening in your husband's brain, is a scar is going right across that wire. And so that's why he has memory loss. That's why he's having mood swings. That's why he's having anxiety attacks and dealing with depression and it's changing who he is. So essentially, that scarring on people's brains caused by MS is causing them brain damage. And that was just like the answer I needed. I was like, oh my gosh, that makes total sense. No neurologist has ever explained it to me like that. And
so it's almost like a traumatic brain injury or something.
Yes. So I was like, and it makes total sense that I'm like, well, why isn't neurology and this isn't to bag on neurology. They've been great
Hmm.
on so many levels, but the people I noticed have been the most helpful are the psychiatrists for my husband specifically, because my husband's was manifesting so much cognitively rather than physically. So back
Mm.
to that analogy with the wires, that's why you'll see people in a wheelchair, is because it's cutting through a place that cuts their mobility off. So my husband started cognitively, but he was still running and he was still very fit and in shape, but cognitively he was not the same person.
Hmm. Interesting. Huh.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. And so that's still basically the symptoms he has now. Now it's also moving physically.
Hmm.
So it's not dementia. It's like when you and your kids show up, he knows exactly who you are and he's happy to see you and he's like, "Oh, you're it's
Yes.
my wife and my kids," and you hang out and whatever. That's good. Your videos are they're so beautiful. Like you and your family are just so, like, there's a lot of laughter. There's a lot of, um, I mean, you laugh a lot, and you find him very charming and funny still. And um, does he realize he's being as charming and funny as you find him?
I don't know. I guess. Do you think he's charming and funny? I
Well, yeah, but I don't know if he's meaning to be or if that's just a symptom of it. You know what I mean?
no. No. He's always been that funny, but I will
Okay.
say that his filter is gone. So he will say things. He will say inappropriate things. Maybe I don't know how to say this, and it's probably too much information, but what married couples might say to each other, or a husband might say to a wife. My husband used to know when to say that and when not to, especially if our kids were in the room.
Right.
Now he'll say stuff, and my kids will be there, and I'm like, "You guys, I'm so sorry, Dad didn't mean to say that." And so he just is, his filter is gone. But yes, he's so
Hmm.
fun and so funny. And one of the things that it changed the dynamic of our marriage. So uh we're just, it's different. Like, I allow him to say stuff about my outfits because he's funny, but he used to just like be like, "Oh my gosh, you look amazing today." And he used to say it in a different way. But now that
Hmm.
his brain is being the way it is, it's just interesting that it's coming out in a like, let me pill apart your outfit that you're wearing today. So there's just funny things about it. And so
Hmm.
because he's losing his mind, there are funnier things. And it puts us more on like a friendship type level where I can laugh about things. Whereas if he was totally fine and he said that, I'd be like, "You're being a punk. Stop talking to me like that." No, we do have
Ah.
days where I'm like, "Man, if we had a video camera following us around all day today, we would have so much content." Like, we have a lot of fun together. Not to say that we don't have bad days. He still gets mood
Mhm.
swings occasionally. Not as bad. Being at the assisted living is so nice because it seems like it mellowed out his symptoms. When he comes home, he's like, "Okay, I'm ready to go back." And um, it's if there's too much noise. But
Mhm.
anyway, I
Yeah.
probably went off on a tangent there.
No, no, this is all stuff I want to know, and that I think other people need to know. So, um, yeah, I can feel that. Like this is about 10 years ago. I was in the psych ward for a few weeks, and I got started having day passes, and my kids were younger, and I remember my wife picked me up, and we went somewhere. It was like in the mall or something. The kids were playing, and I mean, it was like a half an hour later, and I'm like, we have to go now.
Yeah.
Like, this is too much. Um, I need my comfort zone. So yeah, I can relate, and I can, yeah, I can understand that. And he must feel some guilt at times too, that he doesn't even want to be around his own wife and kids because it's too much, you know?
You know,
Or maybe not. Maybe it's just a thing to him now. It's just black and white.
it's hard when it deals with the brain, because my husband's declining mentally, so he acts more
Mm,
like a kid, and it does affect him like somebody who has dementia. So there's a lot of
Gotcha.
similarities, but he remembers his family. It's if, like, if you were to come to my home and have a conversation with him, actually, it's weird. It's a little bit eerie lately. I don't know, eerie is the right word. That kind of has a negative connotation to it, but I, I just had a conversation with him, and he usually can't stick with it. But a few days ago, we had a conversation, and I was like, I can't believe how clear he's talking to me right now. I usually, after every couple minutes, he'll be like, what are we talking about? But it's a blessing because sometimes I need him to show up for me, and I just need to talk to him. And so he's there. I've had to have some deep discussions with him about some of my own struggles that I've gone through, and over the last few years. And I've had to talk to him and say, this is what I've been dealing with, and I make mistakes. I'm not a perfect person. And during those moments where I need to talk to him, he's clear. It's like he can show
Hmm.
up for me at certain times, but he's not always able to do that. But I'm so grateful for those moments. Like, I've been able to be completely honest with him and talk to him about some of my own struggles, um and he'll say, I am so sorry. Like, I'm so sorry I'm not there for you. I'm so sorry that I can't do some of those things. And so he does have moments of guilt, but I don't know how to explain it to anybody, because he will appear for me and be like, I am so sorry. Even if he gets frustrated with me about something that I disclose to him and say, I'm struggling with this, okay? And he might be frustrated, but he'll always come back with, like, he'll feel bad that he's not there for me. He's not there for his
Hmm.
kids. But then once we've talked about that, he goes right back into kind of a dementia, kind of an MS declining state. Um, and so
Hmm.
I don't even know how to describe that to somebody. If somebody is dealing with dementia, or if you know somebody who's dealing with dementia, you see things like that, where maybe you'll see a snippet of who they used to be, and they'll show up for you, and then they kind of go back. And so, anyway, so it's actually, I'm super grateful because it's a beautiful thing that he has memory loss, because I think I've met a lot of people who have MS and they've lost their mobility and they're not able to help their spouse, and mentally they are totally clear. And I feel like that brings on a whole other level of depression, that you remember the life you used to have so clear, but you're physically breaking down. I feel like for my husband, he remembers that, but he'll say things to me like, hey, we should go for a hike today. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, so should we, take your walker or take your wheelchair on this hike? Like, in my mind, I'm like, it's going to click with him any moment that he's not capable of doing that. And
Hmm.
it doesn't. And so I roll with it most of the time. Or we went to one of our daughter's indoor soccer games about 6 months ago, and he takes his walker in there, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, we should start up a indoor soccer, a co-ed indoor soccer team with our friends."
League or something. Right.
And I
Right.
was like, "Yeah, that would be good." And I was listening to him, so I was just staring at him, listening to him, being like, "Any moment now, he's gonna be like, oh, but I can't because I'm on this walker. I can't even walk." But he was like, oh, but we can't because we have jobs and our friends are busy. Like, that was in his mind. He's thinking that was the reason. There, it wasn't that he had MS and that he was disabled. It was that, oh, life's too busy. We've all got too much going on, and we've got the kids. So it's actually beautiful, though. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a
Hmm.
beautiful thing that he has memory loss, and it's been something I have been so grateful that he has, so that he can stay happy and he's not dealing with the depressive state, because he was dealing with a lot of depression 5 4 3 4 5 years ago, and now it's kind of
Right.
like he's just in a way better place.
Hmm. Yeah, that's the silver lining, I suppose.
Yes.
So I guess who do you go to Like, do you see a therapist, or do you see a counselor or anything like, or are you like, or have you in the past?
I have seen a therapist, but I am actually a life coach and I went through the life coach school. So um, I actually have other coaches who have gone through the life coach school coach me. I have a couple of
Mm.
coaches that I are my go-tos. And so yeah, I do get coached because like you said, um, um, I I mean, I'm being extra personal on this for some reason, but it just you do have needs that aren't met, and you do have, like, I don't have somebody to come home and talk to. Like, women need that. They are fed by having a spouse that will, like, they can talk to and be like, oh my gosh, this is blah blah blah, and women just talk and need
Hmm.
that. um and so I'm able to get coached so that I can think about my thinking. But when I just need a buddy, when I just need somebody who's not going to coach me, but just to listen, I call my mom or my sister, because I can just be like real with them, and I can be like, listen, these are the mistakes I've made. Um, I at one point, uh, I actually want to do a social media post on this, but maybe I can use your podcast for it. But I have this thing where I call it remodeling rock bottom, because I feel like I got to rock bottom, and instead of like, I'm very religious. I believe in God. I believe He's been with me, but I got to a place of rock bottom where I wasn't necessarily making great choices, and for that, great choices for myself, that were in line with who I want to be and who I am. But when you go through, when life beats you down so bad, you sometimes look for outs that, um, you know that they feel wrong, but you go to them anyway, thinking, oh, it will be a nice out. Kind of like somebody might go to emotionally eat with food. I've I've made choices that were not necessarily great, and that's very much so part of just who I am. But I hit this place of rock bottom, and instead of trying to climb out of rock bottom, I call it that I was trying to remodel rock bottom. So I had a friend from high school that I kept in my life. I had helped check her into a mental hospital, but she would always tell me, her all these people are narcissistic and gaslighters and all that. She would tell me that so many times, and I'm like, how do you meet all these narcissist people? Like, I don't even know one. I didn't know one at the time, but
Spoken like a true narcissist.
so that was one thing I had to work through, is that there was
You're a narcissist?
no, no, no. So
Oh, oh. I've spoken with some on the podcast, but anyway.
no, one thing that I don't know narcissistic people, but I had helped my
Hmm.
friend check into a mental hospital a couple years before that. But she was going through a hard time. I was going through a hard time, and I just allowed her to be in my life, even though I felt wrong. It felt shallow. It felt not right. But she would tell me all these people were narcissists, and she would also take things I said and twisted it. And there was this
Mm.
moment where I was like, this is what I'm going through. And instead of being like my mom and dad, I went and told them, I'm like, this is my deep dark secret. I need to tell you because I don't have anyone to talk to. And I talked to my friend about this. And instead of being my friend, she took the things I would say and she'd twist them. And she kept twisting them. And um, it was so weird. But I look back on that, and it was just like she constantly was so mean. Like, my dog died. It was a dog that I took over from her. She and her husband got divorced, and I took her dog at like years old, 1 years old. I bought her dog from her. And the dog was 5 years old and had a seizure and died. And I remember her being like my kids were all like crying. Like, seriously, we're devastated that our dog just died. It was like our Like, we loved this dog. And I remember my friend being like, well, how did that happen? I don't see how dogs die. Like, did you guys drop the dog? Like, she was trying to tell me that I killed my dog. And at that point, I was like, I had a friend that was a life coach, and she specifically coaches people who have been through narcissistic abuse. And I was like, I am in a narcissistic relationship with my friend. She's not even my friend. I felt like I was her caregiver too. That was the weird thing, is I kept her in my life, but I felt like I was her caregiver at the same time. And it like clicked with me. It was actually a huge blessing, because there were some other things, like I said, like in my life that I was like, I'm not doing what's right in my life or what's right for me. And it like opened up this whole door where I'm like, I need to get rid of this choice and this one, and just make it as right as I can and move forward. And that's really for me when I was like, I've got to get my life. And when I did that, that's when I was like, I need to share my story on social media. Like, I feel like that remodeling rock bottom was me avoiding doing what God wanted me to do. Like, I always felt like I needed to share my story, and I feel like I needed to bring awareness so other people didn't feel alone. And that was the part of the rock bottom that I was feeling like I needed to do. But I was like, no, I'm going to stay down here. So I'm going to remodel and throw in couches and hang up pictures. And I'm going to make the foundation a little bit wider. And so instead of climbing out, I just made my foundation of rock bottom bigger. But the crazy thing about remodeling rock bottom was that it's not a fun place to live. I wanted to be there. I didn't want to be there. I knew it, but also I had been through so much hard that I'm like, I don't know that I can climb out of rock bottom at this point. And, but I did. And it was like a huge blessing, and help correct my path and help me just change my life. That's the thing, is when you put God in your life. Are you religious?
Well, not organized religion. No.
Okay. But do you believe in God?
Todd.
You believe in Todd?
That's my God and Todd joke. Well, I believe in a higher power. Let's say. I don't. I mean, my brain's pretty small compared to the size of the universe, so I don't have it figured out. But I believe there's something bigger than me. Let's put it that way.
Well, I believe that something bigger than all of us is God. Like, I believe He is the creator. And I have one thing I was trying to do is push. I could tell that God was sending me this trial with my husband to learn from it. I knew that. And I knew that I wasn't going to walk away from this trial, but I was doing other things that weren't in line with who I was to find an out. Because I thought maybe I could just kind of escape it over here for a minute and come back, And those escapes were not in line with who I wanted to be. And once I was like, okay, God, fine, I'll do what you want me to do. Just help me. Like, it was like my narcissistic friend, it was like all of this light came about where it was just like, get rid of this person, and just do what I've asked you to do. And from there, it was so crazy when you invite God back into your life to help you make those changes. That Todd or God, whoever you want to.
Sorry.
To each their own, okay? But yeah, so I feel like that a drastic change happened in my life, and I was able to overcome a whole lot of things that I didn't even realize I was spiraling. I didn't even realize I was going through my own. I don't know. When you go through something hard, like I've gone through with my husband, you have to reinvent who you are as an individual who's taking on life alone, who is also married without a partner. You know what I mean? Without the companionship of a partner.
As an individual.
Yeah. I had to figure out who Lindsay was as Lindsay, not Lindsay and Reed. I had to figure out who Lindsay was as a single parent, quote unquote. My husband is not able to parent with me or do anything like that. So you have to figure out who you are as a person, and that comes with sometimes just making mistakes. And so I think when I share on social media, I don't want anybody to ever think that I think I'm perfect or that everything's was done perfectly, but it's more of just like, this has been a process for me, and I didn't turn into the Incredible Hulk overnight like people expect you to. I actually had to go through my own emotions and wondering, just as a caregiver, you are so deprived of so much in your life. Everybody else needs you, that you put your self-care on the back burner. And so I don't know how to describe that, but it comes with making mistakes and figuring out who you are. And some people aren't compassionate with you going through your own process and making your own mistakes. And those are the people you don't need in your life.
Hmm. I can fully relate to everything you're saying, except for the God part. But, but I mean, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, during my rock bottom, it wasn't just a spike, right? Like you said, it's like you get down there and then you kind of wallow in it for a while and you make more bad decisions, and sometimes you create more trauma by your making these bad decisions. And I had to, I looked at my list and I had to cut from my team a bit too, some people. I had to be completely honest with myself and my loved ones. At the same time, my wife, she took care of herself. She, as an individual, I was taking care of myself as an individual. Then we got together and saw someone together. Because yeah, I mean, we're all very complex, nuanced beings, and if we don't understand ourselves, it's hard to move forward with a real meaningful relationship, and being 100% yourself and honest with that other person and with yourself. It's tough. And when I was down in that, I can't remember what you call it, readjusting.
Remodeling rock bottom.
Yeah. It's almost like self-harm. It's like you're down there, and instead of cutting or whatever self-harm you do, you just, for me, it was alcohol and drugs and bad relationships and things. And yeah, I was just, because it was like this, it was instant gratification. And so it was like, this is what I need right now. But in the long term, it's terrible for you. Like, not even long term, like 2 days later, as opposed to instantaneously being good for you. And so, yeah, I was doing a lot of things outside my own moral code. And yeah, it's a journey. It's a journey, man. So yeah, it's nice to see that both you and Reed, had your individual journeys, but you also have this beautiful journey as a couple together too, and as parents.
Yeah. It's been quite the journey, but it's helped me to be compassionate on other people. And
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, like you said, I'm glad that you said that you wallowed in rock bottom. Like, I feel like I wasn't necessarily digging deeper. I mean, people would say you keep digging if you keep making choices, but I really felt like I'm like, maybe I should just be content right here. So like, even like having my friend stay in my life, like you were talking about bad relationships, or having other friends in my life that shouldn't have been there, that I knew shouldn't have been there in the first place, but I kept
Mm-hmm.
them there. And instead of just getting really honest with myself, and even honest with Reed, and honest with the people in my life, it was like, maybe this is how the rest of my life is. I don't know when the trial ends with Reed. I don't know if there's an end in sight, but maybe this is where I'll live for a little bit. But you become clouded, and you become,
Mm-hmm.
it's not confused, but after you crawl out of your nicely remodeled rock bottom that really is like a mud pit, you can look back on it and be like, oh my gosh, like I was not seeing things clearly. I was totally making wrong choices. And I think that out, like you were saying, drugs and alcohol, I think everybody has something they go to. And mine wasn't necessarily like, I had things because it was like,
Mm-hmm.
my judgment was so clouded
Mm-hmm.
because I kept digging rock bottoms for so long that it was just like, oh my gosh, what the heck am I doing to my life? Like I actually have seen people, like I have my friend. I have a couple of friends, but they're single, and they're my age, or around my age, our age. And I have you heard of this hoe phase?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I had a friend that told me, he's like, oh, they're going through their hoe phase or something like that. Like whoever he could have been talking about himself. I can't remember, but he brought it up a couple of times. He was somebody I worked with at one of my jobs, and I remember thinking, like, the more they talked about it, I'm like, I am going through that. Like, this is what it is. I told him, I'm like, I came up with an acronym for your hoe phase. It is a horrendous overload of emotions. You're going through all of these emotions, and you have never experienced this before. And you aren't, even though people might say, oh, they shouldn't do this, you have never lived that personally yourself. And given all of the aspects of what comes with that hard that you go through, like it's just like you get all of these emotions, and to escape those emotions, you go to drugs and alcohol. I know a lot of people who have mental illnesses that they get a lot of tattoos, or they cut their hair, or they
Oh, those people are the worst. Man. Oh God. No, I know. I know what you're saying. No, yeah, yeah.
I'm not against tattoos. All I know
No,
is
I know.
I've met people who have gone through it, and they're like, I went to a tattoo parlor, and I came home with this tattoo that I don't even want. Or
Yeah.
so it's like a,
Or they overeat, like you said. Or
yes, like there's
yeah.
everything. Like it could be anything, or going to porn even. Like they're looking at social media, or they're binge watching Netflix, and it's what I call in my life coaching, and they call it the life coach school, buffering. So instead of feeling like what pain feels like, you go to this place of like overeating or over drinking or whatever to avoid feeling pain. And for me, that's what I found myself doing, is buffering in this place where I had so many emotions that instead of learning to feel those and kind of swallowing those emotions all the way through, I was going to things to escape it that were not conducive to who I am or make me a better person. But that's the very things that help all of us, is those mistakes. And as ugly as they are, those are the things that help us to become who we're becoming, you know?
Mm-hmm. And then help other people through them, or just having a podcast about it or whatever to
Yes.
help other people about it. And yeah, so what were you doing? What was the bad stuff you were doing?
Lots.
Yeah, cool. Tell me.
No,
Let's go for a drink. I don't. I'm kidding. I'm sober, by the way. I'm like 7 years
good for you.
sober.
Good for you. No, I have things that I guess,
You don't have to talk about it. I'll just be
yeah.
the smart
I,
ass.
yeah.
It's that time again for That Some Bunny special. It's a segment where we chat about who cooperated in your mental health journey and helped fill your emotional tank. And it's brought to you by Co-op, which is a great place here in Canada anyway. They have like hardware stores and gas stations and food stores and all types of stuff. So, but anyway, it's brought to you by Co-op. I have a feeling I know who you're going to say, but who was there for you during the most challenging times for you?
Um,
I have three guesses. I'm going to write them down.
okay,
You
write them
say
down.
them. Okay, you go ahead, Sam.
Okay.
Okay, no,
Don't
sorry. I
show
should
me.
write them down first.
Don't show me who they are. But I will
Okay.
preface it by this. It has been so amazing. I think with media, with social media, we see so much negative stuff. It has been so amazing to see how many good people are in this world, and I felt like I could talk to them about certain things. I like I will say that there are so many people who played or even said a snippet, and even sometimes those bad ones who were like said something that actually changed the course. I was mad at them for a minute, but it changed the course of where I needed to be. And I'm so grateful, like so grateful for some of those negative ones. But it's been so awesome to see how many good people. With that said, the people that I can talk with and share my deep, dark secrets with, and who stand there and support me no matter what, I will say first and foremost have been my mom and dad. And my mom and dad are the first. They have become therapists over the last 7 years for me. They didn't even realize it, but my mom and dad are the first ones to, you know, metaphorically slap me across the face and be like, you know what, you're not doing what's right in your life, so correct that, or that's an irrational thing you're doing, or you're not being very loving in that decision. But they're also, when I have told them and said, these are the things I'm going through, like I approached my parents and I'm like, I have no one to talk to about some of these things. My parents were the first one to say, this is what you need to do to make it right. And this is not who you are. We know who you are. Life has handed it to you. So anyway, my parents first and foremost, all of my siblings, I have 4 other siblings. I have 3 brothers and a sister. And even my brothers' wives have been amazing. So like really I've watched my family just step up to the plate and dive in to help their little sister, and I have one younger brother. So I guess can I put all of those in one bucket? My mom
Sure.
and dad. My mom and dad and my siblings have been amazing.
Okay. Well, I put mom and sister,
Okay.
so that's good. And then I put God. You didn't
God.
say
I didn't
God.
say that. I I was thinking people, I have to say, Todd, that God was, I could get emotional about how much God loves each one of us. The times where I have felt the the most unworthy, the most like, yeah, the most like uh there's a level of unworthiness you feel when you're posting on social media because you know all of your own faults. But
Mm-hmm.
I know that that's what God is wanting me to do. But one of the things um, is that God loves us all so much. Like the second that we recognize that we need help and that we're willing to change, even if it's a little bit, some of the moments where I like, I had a, I'll tell you this one story as far as God goes, because he is first and foremost.
I'll cut it out, but okay.
Okay. Are you cutting it out?
No, no, no. I don't know. I'm just being a smartass.
Um, I told you I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and um, when I was doing things that were not in line with um, my religion or my beliefs in my religion, I was doing things that were not in line with that because I was looking for an out, and I was letting my emotions drive that and letting carelessness drive my actions. I remember there was this one day where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling like crap. It was the remodeling rock bottom. I was trying to remodel rock bottom that week, and I was feeling at an all time low. And I remember my brother telling me something about like, he's like, I don't know why, I can't remember how he said it, but he's like, there are angels watching over you and your family. And I remember thinking, certainly not, because I am not making the right choices in my life. There could possibly not be angels watching over me, probably my children. And for my husband's sake, probably my children, like watching over them, but not me. And I remember having the Mormon missionaries knock on my door, and they just said, I they came to my door and read 2 scriptures, and they both talked about angels ministering over me. And I said, did we have a bishop in our ward that kind of looks over the ward? And I said, our area here, I don't know how. And I said, I remember just staring at them. And they probably were like, this girl is a social, like socially weird. But I remember just staring at them being like, And I said to them, they asked me a question and I totally dodged the question. And I said, did my bishop tell you to stop by my house? Like, why did you guys come to my house? And they said, well, we were on our way home and we just felt the need to stop by your house. And that was such a testimony to me that God is just aware of us, even in those moments where we're at rock bottom and we don't know how to pull ourselves out, or we're trying to get comfortable in rock bottom. That was one of those moments I had where I'm like, I am so grateful. Like, I'm so grateful to know that a person like me who might not be making right choices is still worthy enough of God's love and worthy enough of him to send two people to my home to tell me that angels are watching over me. And my brother had just told me that a couple days before, and it was just like, oh my goodness, like, thank you. Like, it's just, I may not have felt the angels there, but just that 2 times that week I had people say there's angels watching over you. And I had some of my most like spiritual moments at rock bottom where God was like, I haven't left you, kind of a thing. I know you're trying to leave me, but I haven't left you. And so that's been awesome. So yes,
Nice.
in to answer your question in a long form, God, my parents, and my siblings, my sister, and my mom and dad.
And then you slam the door in their face and say, get off my stoop, you. Be sure to subscribe and to like this video. You can listen on Apple Podcast and Spotify. This is Todd Rennebaum saying, make your beds and take your meds. Keep watching for more interviews with incredible people telling their stories of resilience and adversity with mental health and mental illness.